Hello and welcome back to Inside Update, a show from InsideInvestigator.org. We are a nonprofit newsroom on a mission to root out corruption in Connecticut through investigative journalism. My name is Connor Dragotis. I'm the managing editor here. And today I'm joined by Brandon Whiting, investigative reporter, to do something a little bit different. We have never before talked about an investigation that has not yet been released on this show. Oftentimes we're doing it a week or 2 weeks after because we are putting out new shows every other week. But we thought it would be important and valuable to talk about his newest investigation before it comes out. So you might be seeing this on Friday night when it's released on social, Saturday when it's released on Amazon, Roku, and CT Politics TV, or maybe Sunday morning. The piece has been released Sunday morning at 4 a.m. If you're listening to this on WICC radio in Connecticut. The investigation is called Con Academy, C-O-N Academy, private school allegedly defrauding Chinese immigrants. Brandon, this piece is incredible. I'm so excited for everyone to read this. And I'm excited to talk about it because there were some unique challenges in putting the whole thing together. But let's start at the beginning. How did this cross your desk?
So we had received a tip from someone who had allegedly been defrauded, who is one of the victims of this story. And it all started from there. And, you know, from the first person we talked to, we got introduced to other people to talk to, and everyone had similar but different, unique perspectives on how this all unfolded. Because, some of these people were simply defrauded, or, they're claiming innocent until proven guilty, but they were claiming, and they had quite compelling evidence to back up their claims, to have been defrauded by the president of this private academy here in Connecticut. It's a private high school. It's in the town of Putnam, which is a tiny town all the way, I believe, northeast Connecticut, or maybe on the eastern border. All I know is it took me an hour and a half to drive there, so it was a little bit out of the way for me. But yeah, so some of these people were claimed to have been defrauded by him. Others formerly worked under them, and all of them had quite a story to tell. So just it was a matter of piecing together everybody's stories, getting a hold of people, figuring out how to attribute things to people or not, because a lot of these people wanted to remain anonymous. So that was really probably the biggest hurdle of things, was trying to figure out, well, will you let me say this? And if I do say this, can I attribute it to you? And, what name do you want to go by? And this and that and the third. So that was really the trickiest part of this whole thing, was just trying to piece together how we can do the story in a way where the people who are giving it to us feel comfortable. This is probably taken This is the story that I've done where that portion of it has probably been the most work, as opposed to just the traditional writing and reporting element of it. But yeah, I'm very excited for it to come out. I think that readers should be as well. It's kind of a behemoth, but I think it's a worthwhile behemoth. So
Yeah, so we're talking about the Putnam Science Academy, and this is a piece. I think it's going to clock in at just under 14,000 words when we hit publish, which is maybe the longest piece that we have ever published on InsideInvestigator.org. And, we obviously had another piece that was over 10,000 that you wrote a couple months ago, the Where's Barry cold case investigation. And this was a bit of a challenge for us, I think, from an editorial perspective as well, because we certainly floated the idea of splitting this into two different pieces, right? Like, release part one week, part two the next. How would we market that? How would we share this with people? I know you kind of got wound up a little bit in that process because we were still waiting on information, right? I mean, this is a case where you went to go sit down with the accused and had, as I understand it, a very lengthy meeting with them. I mean, this was the better part of a whole workday here, just getting to know these people. Could you talk a little bit about that? And then we'll go back and talk a little bit about the editorial. Hey, why are we releasing this as one piece instead of trying to spread it out?
Absolutely. So the visit to PSA was unexpected to say the least. I really wanted to make sure that the other portion of the story, from the perspective of the accusers was all hammered out before I reached out to them. And when I did, I was expecting kind of one of two routes. Um, One was the route that they did, which was, come here, we have nothing to hide. And the other was drop the story and we'll sue you. So thankfully they went with the first route. And I went there and it was a really, really interesting experience. I don't think I've ever done an interview to that extent or to that length where it was kind of just hard questions only, it's kind of a topic where there's no escaping, when you're the person you're interviewing is like, hey, I'm the story that I have written however many words about thus far only paints you two in a negative light. What do you have to say for yourselves? I mean, it kind of it's a naturally charged environment. Um, but it's kind of like that's what journalism's about, right? I know at least these are the kinds of stories that appealed to me when I was thinking, okay, maybe I want to be a reporter. And so I'm happy to have really, dug in there and gotten one. The first, God, I probably spent like 3.5 to 4 hours there. The first hour or so was just, letting them just show me what they wanted me to see. So they took me all around the campus. They showed me the dorms. They showed me the basketball team, which is kind of like the shining star of the school. And they showed me all the different buildings that they had purchased, some of them in varying states of disrepair, others which have already been incorporated into the campus. And, they were just selling me on how much work they put into the school, on how many kids they've gotten through it, on all the opportunities they've provided these kids and the coaches, and how everyone who's working on the team is super dedicated to ensuring the best for these children and yada yada, and, how they are as well. And then it all kind of culminated with me sitting down with them in a conference room and, just like, all right, well, time to ask the fun questions. And that's where things kind of got a little bit contentious, I guess I would put it. Certainly tense, and that was yeah, that was a probably my most interesting experience as a journalist yet. So I was happy to have walked out of there and been like, wow, I've learned a lot for this story, but also it's just kind of one of those career moments where it's like, all right, we're taking steps and getting better as a journalist, You're learning that okay, even the toughies we can do those too. So yeah, I would say that the visit was definitely the most interesting portion of the story or gathering the story for me personally, and hopefully that's reflected in the story. So,
I like it. I mean, when you're talking about doing your job, and obviously this reflects in the actions as well. We have this thing, and I know I've said it on the show before. Journalism by humans for humans, which means that we're not going to put out a story that has all of these allegations without taking the time to do it right and not just shoot off an email to someone that says, hey, here are two questions, like, we're about to absolutely nail you to the wall. We want to invest in the time and the conversation to understand the broader context, not just from an organizational, hey, here's this school and their financial picture and the various lawsuits and the liens and the loans. And I mean, again, this is a lengthy, deep dive understanding of the various financial instruments and community elements that have brought about this really difficult situation. But I was very thankful that you were not just willing, but invested the time to prepare for going out there and I don't even want to say, I guess just having a conversation. and seeing where
Yeah.
that went. Because it's vital. I mean, at the end of the day, these are human beings that we want to have compassion for and care for. And I guess at the very least, we need to make sure that we are doing our due diligence to uphold the highest ethical standards of journalism and not just, publish some yellow journalism gotcha type thing. We need to make sure that when the reader walks away from this, I mean, the first section of this is titled A History of Deceit. Like, we're not pulling punches in any way. I don't mean to insinuate that, but understanding the broader context that comes along with some of these, how did this person get in this financial corner, and what does this mean for the school at large? Um, at any point during this, I mean, I know we've talked about it a little bit internally through the editing process, but at some point you realize, like, oh boy, this isn't going to be 3,000 words. This isn't going to be 5,000 words. What does that look like from a reporting perspective where you're trying to balance getting the whole story while also putting it out in a way that's digestible and, you're not losing people halfway through? I think that's a fear of putting something out in this length.
Absolutely. That's a I don't even know how to describe that process, frankly, because in another timeline, this could be like a multi-part docuseries, you know what I mean? Or like a 50,000 word. Well, I guess that's not really an article at that point. That's like,
We're
I
just
don't know.
publishing. We're just publishing.
Yeah. So it's I don't know. With stories like these, it's you do want to streamline things as much as possible, but then I always tell this to anyone who asks me my writing style, and I'm sure Connor, as my editor, you've kind of picked up on it now. It's my main focus is let me just get every single thing down to the page and whittle it down from there and organize it from there. And I think when you're the person who does that and you're the person who's writing that, it's you you tend to want to leave more on the plate than toss off of it. Um but at the same time, I also do think that everything that we have included, it's like it's a there's a phrase for it in the narrative writing world, and I'm probably going to associate the wrong name with it, but it's like Chekhov's gun or something's gun.
Yeah.
Basically, if you any detail you include in your story, you got to do something with it. It has to have purpose. And so I really do believe that the details that we have included here, they're a lot, but they all are pretty integral to telling the story as best as we can. Um, and again, like I said, if it weren't for the problem of anonymity and people having to be very surgical with what details they can give us or what details we can use in this piece. And if there were other people, because this is only the tip of the iceberg from everything that the people we did speak with have told me. They know several other people or claim to know several other people who have also had the same exact experience, some of them upwards of millions of dollars,
Yeah.
were allegedly stolen from them. That either, the language barrier, because all of these people are either first generation Chinese Americans or they're Chinese themselves, would make things too difficult, or just another big thing was kind of the shame factor. People don't want to it's pretty sore subject to slap your name on, be like, hey, I'm the guy who got defrauded for millions of dollars. Here's my story. Maybe for some people they don't see that, but it was a very prevalent theme as I was speaking with some of the sources. That was when I was asking them, I'm like, well, why does nobody else, you claim there's like 10, 15 other people that you know of, why is nobody else coming to talk about it? And they're like, well, a lot of people are worried about showing the world how much money they have, or just worried about kind of, you know, showing the world the mistake that they made that cost them this much money. And I'm like, yeah, I understand that. And frankly, if we did have 10 other people talking to us, then maybe we would have split this thing into several different pieces. But really, the big thing, and I know you had mentioned it, and I was kind of thinking it as well in terms of not splitting this thing up, was just it's kind of hard to structure a story where it's all right, here's a boatload of allegations and evidence to back up these allegations. And then here are the two people being alleged. it's like, okay, so do we just drop 1 week? Boom, here's a whole list of allegations, and then let that simmer for a week and then drop the next week. All right, and there's their side of the story, you know? So it's kind of naturally hard to break up in that way. But I do think we've achieved, and I certainly hope for readers' sakes that we've achieved kind of a pretty good flow to the story. I think it all makes sense, you know, it's a lot, but it follows a pretty good I guess I'm struggling to find other words for flow. It's structured well. I think that it should my hope is that when a reader starts reading it, you know, they get engrossed in it and they kind of just don't want to stop. Or if they do, they'll come back to it because at least from the reporting perspective, that's pretty much how I was, you know, once I kind of got my hooks into the story and I saw how much just honestly evidence and documentation that these people had, I was like, whoa, this is something pretty big. So I'm hoping that you know, readers can recognize that as well, and or I guess as psyched for this thing to come out as I am. So
Absolutely. And I was glad I agree with your sentiment about the why in terms of keeping it in one. I mean, at the end of the day, in my mind, it was a human compassion choice too. I mean, how brutal would it be and frankly irresponsible to dump all these allegations into the public and then basically go radio silent for a week and let everyone, throw out ideas or, there's probably a counter argument that, other sources could come out in a week and, but we want to do our due diligence and show, okay, here is the whole picture for you to understand. And frankly, I do hope that those other 12 or 15 people can see the nature of your reporting, the type of work that you do, and that we do get a couple emails saying, yeah, no, I am one of these people. Here is what's been going on. We know that the FBI has been looking into this since at least 2017. We know that there are investigations happening. We know that maybe a house of cards is too strong a phrase here, but there's certainly an
pretty
unsteady
apt.
foundation. Is it okay? And yeah,
Yeah,
I guess I
yeah.
don't want to
It's
put words in your mouth, but the foundation is certainly not stable for the school. And we've seen this in Connecticut just in the last 2 years with other institutions that have fallen by the wayside. The nursing school where all of these students are all of a sudden stuck. That's not the goal, but at the same time, we have to move the ball forward and bring transparency to instances of corruption because there's a wide swath of people who are being impacted here.
yeah, and it's just it could keep going, you know, if that was the thing that was just in my mind, and that was the thing that was clearly on the mind of the people that I spoke with, is if nobody comes out and says anything about this, you know, it'll just keep on going. And that was, you know, it's funny because on the other side of the aisle, you could see that is the two people I spoke with who are running this thing. That's kind of what they want.
Yep.
And you know, it's I'm not even sure it's kind of they're kind of just forced to at this point. I mean, the financial situation, obviously, we only know what we know. You know, clearly they weren't gung ho about sharing and breaking down all of their finances with us. We tried. We tried. Spoiler alert, we
They said
tried.
they'd only do it under a court
Tried
order,
it.
which,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a
But clearly things are very bad. And just judging by the history of how things have worked at this school, it's kind of just relying, you know, you're only as good as the check you can get from your next donor.
Mhm.
And if you're writing those checks up as a loan and you need another person to loan you to pay back, I mean, it's just, you know, it's Ponzi scheme central, essentially. Um, so you can either let that keep going by not saying anything, but eventually it's going to collapse. It's just a matter of how much longer will it take for it to collapse and how many more people are going to get screwed out of their money before that happens. So yeah, it was, you know, they try to present it as kind of this moral conundrum of, well, what'll happen, you know, if this story is put out and our school shuts down, like think of the kids. And it's like, well, yeah, you know, that's fair, but at the end of the day, it's either going to be one class of kids or a class of kids. At some point in time, there's going to be a class of kids to be negatively impacted by the way things have been mismanaged here. So
Yep.
I'll take that burden off my shoulders right now.
Yeah, it's true. I mean,
Um,
that's a
um,
really difficult part of the job. I mean, every single time that you put pen to paper, it impacts a real human life. And
yeah,
we talk about that a lot in our newsroom. I mean, every time that we're going through edits, it's very much on the forefront of our mind. If it's all right with you, I want to read part of the introduction because I think what you said about people getting hooked and then wanting to track through. Can I give them a teaser? Are you all right if I do that a little bit?
absolutely.
Okay. So in the first section, Brandon just kind of lays out some of the situation here, and in part, it reads, when the two were interviewed, they claimed the only crime they're guilty of is prioritizing their students' needs over their investors, some of whom they believe are intent on destroying them. Through a combination of conversations with on and off the record sources, some of whom worked at PSA and others who were allegedly defrauded, as well as through the procurement of numerous court documents, public records, and private communications, Inside Investigator has found evidence that Ding is not the Yale educated doctor with a passion for education that he has claimed to be. These sources insist that he is neither a certified doctor nor the rightful owner of Putnam Science Academy, but is instead a career con man with a growing list of financial and legal troubles. I just wanted to put that out there kind of as we look to wrap up this episode because it is really impressive what you've been able to bring together here, the financial documents that are linked. We have obviously continued our commitment here to not just internal linking, but to linking to primary sources for our readers as well. So we would love to hear from those who have been similarly impacted, those who have other information, and who can help us continue our mission of rooting out corruption in the Constitution state. As we do look to wrap up here, Brandon, what else would you want people to know about your piece? Any other thoughts on the writing process or anything else to bring out here?
Um, that's a great question. Well, I think I think the piece is really good. I think that the piece is really the fact that we are publishing it. I think it's a testament to just how much documentation and how many people with their stories and all of their details corroborating that give it validity. Like I was worried when we were drafting up this story. I'm like, man, everyone wants to stay off the record. Everyone wants a different name. Everyone, yada, yada, yada. But just the strength of the documentation we were provided alone and the way that everyone's story corroborates and the way that every single person, and we talked to them, be like, oh yeah, I haven't talked to this person in years since then. And their story was exactly as it was said by other people it was going to be. I mean, just the mountain of evidence we have here is kind of just mind-boggling and I would say pretty impressive. So I think it's going to be a big story and I just think that people ought to give themselves, just read through the intro a little bit, then read a little bit further past the intro and hopefully the wheels in your head start to turn and you get hooked into it as I did as I was writing it. So that's pretty much that's all I have to say.
Well, it'll be published at 4 a.m. on Sunday morning. It'll be emailed out to all of our email subscribers at 7 a.m. Sunday morning. So if you are seeing this on Friday or Saturday, head over to insideinvestigator.org, put in your email address there. We send very few emails, 2 a week, actually, Wednesday and Sunday mornings. So that's the easiest way for this investigation and all of our work to be delivered straight to your inbox. We are a nonprofit as well. So everything we do, we have no ads, no paywalls, no sponsored content. All of our emails are free, and we are 100% supported by voluntary contributions from readers. So that puts us in a great spot where we are able to buck the trend of you fighting against paywalls and ads every time you go to a newspaper, which is, I think, a really great competitive advantage, but also just a way that we can serve you with what you need, not try to sell you something along the way. Hugely thankful to everyone who reads Please check out this investigation on Sunday. Let us know what you think. And if you are among those who have corruption to report, send us an email, tips@insideinvestigator.org. Thank you again. Really appreciate you, Brandon. Really appreciate you, everyone who is watching, listening, and tuning in. We'll be back in 2 weeks. And until then, be well, stay safe, and stay informed.